Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. I am your host, June Archer. This is the Winner Circle. Today's guest is an entrepreneur, real estate developer, multi-family financial investor who founded and funded a number of families and businesses throughout his real estate journey. Born and raised in the Bronx, he is no stranger to the gritty of New York City. Please welcome to the show, brother Charles J. Noonan. Brother Noonan, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, June. I like that intro.
Hey, listen, I call it the way I see it. I call it the way I see it.
Appreciate it.
Uh, I'm excited about the things that you're working on, but I want to talk about, more importantly, your dive into real estate, but from your transition from basketball player to entrepreneurship. How did you make
Okay.
that that reinvention of yourself?
So I talk about this with my group all the time, right? My circle, the guys that I surround myself with. Being an athlete teaches you so much more than the sport, right? It teaches you discipline, how to handle adversity, um, characteristics, right? You become a character who's gone through some things. So I knew one, I wanted to be in charge of my own financial destiny, right? I didn't want someone else's name to be on the checks that were given to me at the end of every pay period. I wanted to just jump into entrepreneurship and I wanted to just control my own journey as well as destiny. So leaving college, I knew I wanted to get into real estate because at that time it was like the hot thing. Mortgage rates were good. This was before the bubble busted, right? Mortgage rates were good. You almost had to just know how to plan an investment property. And once you're able to plan and do the numbers, then it was like open season. The more that you were able to handle with lenders, the more that they would give you.
Now, there are a lot of young people who tap into this podcast and this show. What are some of the pitfalls that our young people can avoid as college students who are being hammered with the guerrilla marketing of
Mhm.
here's your first credit card. You want your first credit card. If you get this credit card, you get a backpack. If you get this credit card, you get a everything that they could throw at you that just seems so intriguing.
Man, June, I got to tell you, understanding credit is extremely important. So one of the things, and I'm going to say that saved me, right? And I don't use that term lightly. It saved me was being able to get a scholarship to a private school in New Jersey. So I got a scholarship to Caldwell University. I grew up playing basketball in the city, just like every other kid in all the five boroughs, and we would travel and play. But then when I got to I didn't go to like a city school or a public school. It was a private institution, and I was surrounded with individuals whose parents were able to just pay cash for their tuition. So what that did, it put me in an environment where I was forced to adapt to where I was. So when there was talk about getting a credit card for a keychain, a bottle opener, right? Some of the things you named, a T-shirt for that matter, or like an iPhone charger, right? Which is, they do now today. They would tell me, "Hey, you don't have a job, you can't afford some of the things," and they would teach me financial literacy from a peer perspective. So hearing things from a parent is one thing because sometimes we get to that age where we don't think our parents know anything, right?
Yeah, and we know it all.
And we know it all. But what happens is when your peers are telling you, hey Charles, we're not you don't have a job, you don't have any income. We just get laundry money. Don't take advantage of those credit cards because you can't pay it back. Only buy, and I apply some of these principles in my real estate development today. Only buy what you can afford. And then in real estate, we apply only buy what you can afford to keep. So what that does, it stops us. We have this housing crisis where we're losing properties at record numbers to foreclosure, right? We're losing properties at record numbers to just selling them because we can't afford to keep them. So getting out of school, like I had this sound financial literacy crash course over the course of my time at Caldwell University, where I just knew I had a strategy. It was a real life strategy and a real life approach to real estate that really helped me as soon as I got out.
Is it important, Charles, to teach our young people financial literacy a little earlier before they step foot on a college campus? We're starting to see things like, earn your leisure, talk about financial literacy and investing and real estate. How soon should we teach our young kids financial literacy?
I'm going to say before they get to high school, there should be a start, some form of foundation. Because once they get to high school, let's just say that the ninth grade is where they start to detach, right? You can't drive them to school anymore. They don't want to be driven. They want to kind of do it on their own, right? So now they have to spend money. They have to balance money for the week. We should instill and kind of have our children at that age know how to balance a bank account, know how to budget. And the foundation, the fundamental skills of financial literacy, if given at an early enough age and practiced enough, will carry over through the rest of their lives.
But the behavior, Charles, now I want to play devil's advocate. The behavior is we had to grow up learning how to balance a checkbook and write in the ledger. They don't have to do that anymore. They this generation is like swipe, swipe, tap, tap,
Yeah,
and the bank does it for you. Why is it important? I really want to hammer that point home that they learn these things from that perspective that you just gave us.
it's extremely important because what's happening today is I'll use Gen Z for an example.
Okay.
That Gen Z group, which is typically defined individuals between 18 and 25, they're actually, and I don't know if you know notice this or not, they're actually starting to stay at home and they're living at home longer. And then oftentimes they don't plan to move. So we have a third of Gen Z that's still living with their parents. Then we have another subset of Gen Z that's living with their grandparents. And this is why they don't see a way to where, right, we're in the midst of this housing crisis and this lack of financial literacy that's causing a third of Gen Zers to live at home with their parents or grandparents. And then here's another sad statistic. The other portion of Gen Zers, they're spending 50% of their monthly income on either rent or mortgage.
Mm.
So when we talk about the importance of it, here are two things I'm going to give you. It's important because I'm going to say, and today we're no longer at a point where we can let our kids fend for themselves. We can't let the younger generation, and we grew up fighting through adversity. It made us stronger. We grew up working summer youth employment. We grew up with odd jobs that were readily available to us that taught us these traits and skill sets to be able to excel in the economy in which when we were younger, we were able to make it and move out. We couldn't wait in our generation to move out of our parents' houses, right? Because we almost, our lesson was learned a lot harder, faster, but it was a lot more affordable. So in today's economy, with the cost of housing today, it's important we teach our kids this financial literacy, financial principles very early on so that they now can be able to compete in the world, get out and go perform and be able to live in adequate housing. And for my kids and for my story, I I started to develop in different parts of the country so that I could get properties for my kids so that they could afford to live in downtown Brooklyn where I live today. So I know that we have to, it's important that we teach this stuff because we have to start to get them like on par with where the competition is. We can't leave them behind. We can't leave them to do it on their own. And it's just a way of the world today where if we want our kids to succeed and excel in life, we got to give them that head start as best as we can.
Yeah, I mean, they're already in the deficit
Yeah.
behind their peers in terms of STEM, obviously, as we talk about financial literacy. But is it, Charles, is this a problem from our generation with not wanting to let go or our lack of wanting to educate our children in this generation?
Here's what I think the problem is. It's a combination. That's a great question. I think it's a combination of both, right? We may instill the information, the fundamentals, but then we don't reinforce.
Mm,
Our generation, in my opinion, what studies have shown, has almost built partnership with our children to where we teach them things and then we're not reinforcing. We're telling them things and we're almost letting them see the consequence or the repercussions later on. When in fact, like you said, our kids are tapping. Yeah, they're tapping their phone to pay for things, but they still have to have a reinforced budget and guidelines that they adhere to. What that's going to do is as they go through college, however way they pay for it, right? However way college gets paid for, they are going to have the financial fortitude to know how to balance a budget, to know how to balance money. They'll be able to afford moving out and living in places that aren't super far from home. I'm big on community. I'm big on having our kids live close to us, but not in the same house. Meaning, I want my kids to be able to afford to live in Fort Greene. I want them to be able to afford to live in the new, I think it's called Bed-Stuy Heights, right? I want them to
right.
be able to afford anywhere they want and not have to just go live somewhere where it's like this, lower income state where the cost of living is not that much. Because what happens is the family structure starts to get further and further apart, right?
Right.
The parents have money. So I've made it. I have a portfolio. I can live wherever I want. But if I don't set my kids up for success and if I don't do everything that I can to help those guys afford to live wherever they want, we start to lose our family structure and it breaks apart. And then this is something that was so important to me. And I'm sure you can relate to this, June, with your upbringing. The grandparents were raising us, right? There's a subset of individuals where the grandparents are raising us. So now, if we could keep the community, if we could keep the family closer, right? So now you have the benefit of your parents being close for support, education, family structure. Then you still have the pillars of your family, which would be your grandparents, right?
Right.
Just imagine the structure and support you have now as a 25-year-old,
It's a
right?
great dynamic. It's the village concept in
That's the
practice.
village concept. Just think the pillars that you have that are holding you up. But when it happens, and if we don't start to just be conscious of this stuff, and we don't start to not only prepare for our futures but our kids' futures, they happen to live, and this is what's happening a lot. If they don't stay at home, they don't live with the grandparents, right? They end up going to live in states where they can comfortably afford to live on lower incomes. And that is what I think is going to continue to just hurt the community and hurt our people as far as like having that community structure still in place.
I want to double back and I want to double down on something. I want you mentioned portfolio, so I want you to
Right.
explain to those who are watching and listening who aren't familiar with the term what a portfolio is. But before that, when is the earliest that we should give our young people responsibilities to understand the financial literacy concept? And I'm not talking about it, not that I'm not talking about it, but is it starting with paying them for chores? Because I have a hard time with that because I feel like you should be doing your chores anyway. You should be compensated for
Mm,
that. But what is the earliest, and what are the things that we can do to teach them that delayed gratification allows you to, if you do something now, you get compensated for it, but also upon compensation, you don't spend it immediately, that
yeah.
you save it for something that you really want. So those two things, I didn't mean to give you a lot, but I wanted to make sure that we touch those things before we move forward.
No, those are great. Those are great. So here's a way that we could do it in real time to where it has like this real impact on them. My kids very early on, I'm gonna say 9 and maybe 14, I opened them accounts with a company called Stockpile. So Stockpile, you as the parent manage the account. However, the kids, it's kind of like education on investing for kids. You manage the account, you put money in it, they decide which stocks they're going to buy. So here's what that does to them. It gives them the understanding of savings. And you have to see this, right? Their names are on the account. From a psychological approach, they're going to start asking for money to buy stocks, money to invest, as opposed to asking money for some of the other things that we used to ask for, right? It used to be a pair of sneakers. It used to be whatever, a book bag.
Bike, video games.
Right, video games. It turns on the appetite for them to start to invest. So from an investing perspective, I think little things like that where we have to cater to their learning style. The kids today, the parent teaching them and barking down orders, I don't think that style is as effective as if we say, hey, I know you want money for whatever it is that you want. I opened an account for you and your brother or for you and your sister, whatever it is. It's called Stockpile. Read how to invest, and it's in the simplest language. Read how to invest, and then start investing there, right? And then it teaches them to invest in things that they like. It teaches them to invest in things that they're passionate about, which ultimately, as parents, we want our kids working in areas that they're passionate about. We want them doing things that they love. So ultimately, it's not always about, financial attachment. It's about parents wanting their kids to be happy, their kids to be doing well, be productive citizens in the community. So as far as investing, like there are things that speak their language that we can do. One of them is investing in stocks, right? Just from a stockpile account. And then from a real life, like a tangible perspective, I teach them about real estate investing, but I teach them about real estate investing from a point of creating inventory through what we know today as land bank properties. So we'll touch on that shortly, but I want to get back to the other thing. Do you pay your kids for chores? Man, it's a toss up with that. Here's why, right? My kids, they've grown up, right? Privileged in a sense. I could say I'm going to pay you to clean your room. They don't do it anyway. I could say I'm going to pay you to do X, Y, Z. They don't do it anyway. And here's the exchange. And I battle with this sometimes. Like I said, I'm surrounded by a group of investors and very close friends that I have the privilege of being a part of this friendship group, right? And we say it all the time that the things that matter to us don't necessarily matter to them. However, they tell me not to be so hard on them because I have two kids that are scholarship athletes. They're getting solid grades in school. They're really good character, well-mannered kids. So it's like, do I let them slide with not doing chores or not being the cleanest kids in the world? Sometimes I do. That exchange allows me to just say, all right, do it when you come back or do it tomorrow or whatever the case may be. So, hey, I'll say that to say this. I don't have the answer on how to get a kid to clean his room, especially
you don't have the answers. You don't have the answers, Charles.
I don't have the answers to how to get them to make their room smell good, look good, or any other stuff, or get them to eat vegetables. However, I think if you just stress the importance in their language as parents that we are today, we stretch the importance of investing, financial literacy, financial education to the best of our abilities and what works now. I think you can raise kids that will not be those Gen Zers that will still be living in your house at 25, 26, and 27 years old. They'll be down the street.
But they won't be in your house.
Won't be in your house.
A simplified definition of what a portfolio is.
Okay. A portfolio I'm going to say a count of your real estate purchased, a count of the real estate that you have owned. So it's very similar to a stock portfolio, right? And that is just like a count of the stocks that you own. Very similar. It's the same thing. A real estate portfolio. My personal real estate portfolio consists of 34 land bank properties and over 316 deeds of land that I've purchased throughout the country. So that is what composes my portfolio.
Gotcha,
And
gotcha.
then I own the home that we live in Brooklyn today.
I love it. I love it. I
Yeah.
want to talk about this land bank team that you have, land bank family group.
Mhm.
But when you talk about land bank properties, what do you mean by land bank properties?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'll break it down in two portions. I'll tell what a land bank is, then I'll tell what a land bank property is. A land bank is a government entity whose sole focus is to turn vacant properties into properties that are occupied according to the local community goals. So what they'll do, because America says that there's a housing crisis and there's a shortage of housing. When they say that, they're ignoring the vacant properties that we have. America has over 346,000 vacant properties. And I decided to invest in land bank properties with the very same principles that I told you about earlier, which is buy what I can afford and buy what I can afford to keep. So the government entity will go into a neighborhood that has a problem property issue. They'll work with the municipality and they'll work with the community. And here's why they work with the municipality. They have to get the municipality to agree that there's a problem property issue. And once they do that, they ask the municipality for their permission to sell those properties at pennies on the dollar to individuals that are interested in turning those properties from vacant to vibrant. Now, problem properties have historically contributed to the deterioration of neighborhoods and communities, right? And here's three reasons why. They're unsafe. They cause a lot of safety hazards. They tend to be the location or addresses of high crime. And then thirdly, they lower the property values for everyone else in the community. So once a municipality identifies that they do have a vacant property problem, the land bank then creates an agreement with them, allow us to sell these properties. They'll also do what's called quieting title. Quieting title removes all the liens, any foreclosures, any back taxes or water bills. So what it does now, it allows the land bank to sell a property to any individual that's interested in renovating that property.
Starting with even Steven.
Even Steven,
Okay.
you buy it. Here's the agreement. You buy it. Every land bank has a subset of requirements that they want you to complete before you own it outright. So you're able to buy these properties. And I'll give you an example. Buildingdetroit.org is one of the most popular land banks, and they have vacant properties that start at $1,000. So here's the agreement. You buy the property, within 1 year, you renovate it and satisfy this subset of requirements. It's usually 6 to 8 requirements, and they're typically just renovation requirements, right? Windows, doors, furnace, hot water, things that you would do anyway.
Right. Egress, make sure everything is
Absolutely.
Okay.
And here's the exchange back to the municipality. The city now, we'll take Detroit, for example. Detroit now gets a property where there's going to be a water bill, a tax bill, an electric bill, a gas bill. It's going to increase the value in the community. It's going to be more safe, right? So now just think of a block that was 50% vacant, now is completely occupied. So now there are no vacant houses for our kids to walk by to go to school, right? There are no vacant houses for animals to live in, for crime to take place. There's no quote unquote what they would consider trap houses anymore. It's now a fully occupied community. So it's a huge, I would say, win-win exchange for the community, the municipality, and any individual that wants to start to get into real estate from following the two principles: from a property that you can afford and a property that you can afford to keep.
Charles, that was a mouthful. There was some gems in it. How can people learn about Land Bank or even learning from you and being part of your team?
Okay, awesome. So I would say the first thing, I want individuals just do a little bit of research first before reaching out to me, so you just have a better understanding. The Center for Community Progress governs all land banks, and there you could find the National Land Bank map. The 250 land banks spread out throughout the course of the United States. Detroit happens to be the most popular. It happens to be where most of my team members decide to invest. And when we say team members, because I've done so well and built a portfolio of real estate that cash flows and that allows my kids to receive passive income every month, I've allowed others to kind of like follow my footsteps. So I created what we know today as the Land Bank team. And that team it's comprised of a group of individuals, like-minded individuals that see value in investing in real estate, where it has two benefits. One is profit and the other is purpose.
Mm,
So when I got into investing in land bank properties, right, I was thinking about my sons and I was only thinking profit. It was more so I had to do something to allow them to afford rents in, like, let's just say the tri-state area, right? And then if they were looking to buy something that would afford them to be able to start to save money so that they can buy their own properties. Because let's face it, like, to live in my neighborhood today, you're going to need a mortgage of at least $1.5 million, maybe $2 million. It's not fair to ask kids just graduating college to be able to afford that as a starter home, right? It's just not fair to them. So I decided to invest in land bank properties just to create that path and maybe even the playing field a little bit as parents. And remember, I said we have to start to set our kids up for success and to be able to compete. So if they're not thinking about mortgage, if they're not thinking about their bills, if they're not thinking about rent, if they're not part of that subset of the third group of Gen Zers that are spending 50% of their income on rent or mortgage, they can now start to focus on what area they're in of their expertise, which will certainly produce, right, better results in their fields, lead to higher salaries. They can focus on an area of expertise if they wanted to go for further education, whether it be secondary degrees or whatever that have you. It just allows for them more to make more money, be more productive. So I created the Land Bank team, and we meet every Tuesday where I mentor and I coach, and I just walk them through exactly how they can get involved as well.
man, Charles, I don't know if you're drafting anybody, but I love to be on that team. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Charles J. Noonan. Where can we follow you? How can we like and support what it is that you're doing, brother?
Oh, absolutely. So here, Charles J. Noonan on Instagram is where most individuals contact me because everybody's on social media. That's the easiest and fastest way. Just shoot me a message at Charles J. Noonan on Instagram. And then what I've done, so to just spread awareness and to share other individuals' stories, I actually have a podcast that I just started called The Land Bank Show, where we educate individuals on land bank properties, what they are. And then we share information from other individuals that have broken into real estate through non-traditional methods. And the reason I started the show that way and I structured it that way is because real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry. And our people, sometimes, if we don't have 2 years of consistent work history, 2 years tax returns, um, 2 months bank statements with positive cash flow and no negatives, a 720 credit score, we don't think we could get into real estate investing because we don't have the perfect portfolio. So on that show, I share some stories of individuals that got into real estate and made a lot of money through non-traditional methods. So it's all about helping. It's all about giving back. It's all about educating. And it's all about us preparing ourselves for our future and then preparing the future generations ahead of us.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here. Profit and purpose. Is never too late and never too early to educate our young people and ourselves on financial literacy. But also, if you have the opportunity to upgrade a neighborhood by
Absolutely.
being a part of a land bank opportunity, please make sure you do so. Charles, brother, it has been a pleasure. I'd like to ask you before I let you go, music is the soundtrack to our lives. What song best represents your journey up to this point? Or which artist inspires you the most?
Oh, so I got to go with, I was born in the Bronx. I live in Brooklyn, right? But this artist has just been my favorite artist, man. So I got to go with Biggie and I got to go Sky's the Limit.
I love it because
Yeah,
it truly is the limit.
it's the limit. And I just relate to him because he went from humble beginnings. And you see, as his career opened, you saw his mindset open, and his mind just grew to where he makes this song saying, like, sky is the limit. You can have what you want, you can be what you want.
And he said it best. He went from ashy to classy. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Charles J. Noonan. I am your guy, June Archer. Please never leave the opportunity undone to tell somebody that you love them. It may be the last opportunity you have to do so. I love you, Brother Charles. I love you. Keep doing what you're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Winner Circle. I am June Archer. Thank you for tuning in. Peace.
Thanks, Joe.